Right, a very good day to all of you, and I'm very pleased today because I could be presenting my keynote speech for the 11th ASEAN Plus 3 student camp and also the 13th teacher workshop for the gifted in science. As for the keynote speech today, I will be presenting on the title called STEAM Education, STEAM, as well as Low Carbon City. So with that, I go a little bit further on this short keynote speech. Allow me to introduce who am I and why I'm presenting for the keynote speech today. So I'm Dr. Ng Chak Chuan, or in short, my full name will be Chak Chuan Ng. Ng is my family name. I'm from the China ASEAN College of Marine Sciences, Xiamen University, Malaysia. So this is my profile. I'm currently an assistant professor and I'm working in the field of marine environmental chemistry. So my research interests and expertise are mostly related to environmental pollution and bioremediation, as well as in environmental management and sustainability. So I have completed my bachelor degree in environmental science and management back in 2012, and subsequently I've completed my PhD in Applied Environmental Sciences back at the Institute of Biological Sciences, Faculty of Science, University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2017. So with that, allow me to continue with the keynote speech today on STEAM education. Probably STEAM education is something new to most of you, as you may not heard of, or maybe to some of you is something is already familiar with, which is very good. Today, we will talk about the idea of STEAM education. But prior to that, let's just quickly see what is science. What is basically the idea behind of doing science? You know, science is a very important subject where most of you are venturing in. And today, with the motion of the ASEAN Plus 3 student camp and the teacher workshop for the gifted in science, for sure, we want to introduce and embark more deeply in science. So what is science as a general kickstart? So you may think of science as a very fun subject where we do a lot of experiment, a lot of explorations, and also in terms of scientific analysis. So this is what you may have in your mind in terms of what is science. All right. And when we look into deeper in a context of science, science could also covers a lot of branches. All right. We will talk about the branches of science in a short while. But again, technically speaking, science are very broad, and what we learn in today's science is very, very shallow. There are many things that we have yet to explore. So there are many other informations that we have not known today, but which we want all of you young scientists out there, including our beloved teachers, to nurture our young kids, especially those gifted in science, to develop and explore much more new discoveries. So this is what we aim for. But again, let's just get back to the scientific basic of what is science. So science is generally known as the pursuit and also the application of knowledge and understanding of the natural as well as the social world by following a very systematic methodology, which is based on evidence. So end of the day, this definition is provided by the Science Council, where the idea of science itself, we are pursuing something that we want to know how it works, and this is all done through a scientific base of experiment, scientific of applications, and as well as with supported by evidence. So science is not something false. Science is always something is solid and it is robust, and it is something that we want all of you to venture into. So that is the aim of what we want to do in this student camp as well as the teacher workshop here. So this is the general layman understanding of science. And when we move a little bit further on what is science, we will also need to understand the importance of the common branches of science. So as you could see over here, science can be roughly divided into the three mainstream. And on the left-hand side, you could see we have the biology. In the middle, we have chemistry. And of course, towards the end of right-hand side, you will see physics, okay? So these are the general three branches of science that you most likely go to cover, especially in your upper secondary. So this is where we will look into science of biology, where we divided into the cell of life living organism. Most of the time, it will relate to biology. And next, we have the chemistry, where it anything that deal with reactions, that's how the chemical will take place in the field of chemistry. And last but not least, we also have a very broad field of physics, where we will understand how the mechanisms of a lot of daily operations works. This is how the interrelationship between the biological aspect of the chemical aspects as well as the physical aspects of the general science. So whenever we talk about general science itself, it covers all these three basic components. But no doubt, if you may ask, STEM itself, or the particular education of science are even further divided. All right, that's why science is not purely as you could see as it is, because it could be largely complicated too. So again, back to basic, we have the three common branches here: biology, chemistry, and physics. So these are our three backbone of how the science was further developed and divided. However, when we talk about these three ideas, again, science could actually make magic. Science itself can be very interesting, especially just now we talk about how the biological movement, the chemistry have give us the sense of experiments, as well as finally how physics has explained how things works. So again, anything that relates to biology, it is definitely something that is moved. Most of the time, it involves living organism. That's where we have the branch of biology. And again, next, when we talk about chemistry, something that is give and reaction, whether it have turned to a different color, throughout the experimental analysis, then this is what we know as chemistry. And last but not least, in a general division of science, we also could not deny that we have the physics, where you could see it is involving the quantum physics or even nuclear energy. So all those part and parcel are the basic building blocks of chemistry, science, as well as biology science, as well as physical science. All these basic sciences has formed complex science that what we have to learn today. So again, science is something very magical. It is definitely real. Otherwise, we will not be studying or doing it at the higher education level. All right, so that is how it moves. So when we put science and education together, we have to understand that we have to decide or define what is education is all about. So education is the basic idea where the process of facilitating learning or even acquisitions of knowledge, skills, values, including moral, belief, habits, and end of the day, we want to build up our personal development. So education, again, is a very broad terminology. In fact, education also cross interdisciplinary with other non-scientific fields. So again, the process itself of acquiring or developing a new knowledge is what is known as education in the layman term. And when we put the both science as well as education together, we will form science education. So again, when we talk about science education, it is definitely a field of science which is concerning with the idea of sharing the science content itself through the process of teaching science pedagogy. So the pedagogy here is basically how our approach in teaching, basically in other words of substitution, is our methods. So in science education, we are also providing the way how we could conduct our classes in order to embark more people to easily understand how science could provide and knowledge to reach out to the community. And most of the time, we do relate people that are working in science, known them as our part of our scientific community. So those of you who share same peers with us in a sense of scientific understanding, you are part of our community, which is known as scientific community. So which always encourage more people to venture and embark in higher education, especially in the field of science education. Again, science education is something very broad. It is still something that we have yet to cover everything. And again, just now we talked about the general science. Then of course, what is new is we have introduced the word STEM for quite some time. So again, the STEM, STEM is not just the stem cell we are talking about in biology. But the STEM here are referring to the S is for science, the T is definitely for technology, E is for engineering, and M is for mathematics. So whenever we want to encourage or promote science education, we will largely hope many of you will work in the field of STEM, where you work in the field of science, technology, engineering, and maths. This is our main outcome end of the day. And I think most country in our existing locations of your whoever you are coming from, regardless whether you are in which part of ASEAN country, we have wanted to do this field. However, something that we need to take note that STEM is not the only thing. What is important today in the keynote speech I would like to highlight is we also need to not to forget the A in the STEM education. That's where we want to introduce you something called STEAM education. So why we want to talk about the A and what is A here? We have known earlier STEAM education is known as a part of STEM, where we have science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So how does the A actually play a role here? So the A basically refers to arts, okay, or humanities in other words. So in other words, when we talk about STEAM, it is something much more important to highlight, where we not only take into the account of the basic idea of science, technology, the engineering, as well as mathematics, but we also could not deny the importance of arts. So arts is also a part of our learning in our scientific way of education. So this is something that we want to nurture and would like to also cultivate the ideas to hope that one day you will not just forget arts as a very important element in our field of science. So again, all of these are easily connected to one another, and it's not something which could be easily separatable. So again, let's just quickly ask or ponder upon why STEM need to be compete with the STEAM. All right. So technically, again, we have worked too much or preoccupied by the word STEM. We talk about science, technology, engineering, mathematics. However, at the present days, there are many researchers, many scientists, especially our educationists, where all these educators talk about the importance of the A, which is the arts. So does the A really matters? If you ask me, I would say a yes, and the A here are quite broadly defined as well. So we will look into a little bit what is the A, okay, when we talk about STEAM education. So again, the general idea of science definitely is the study of the nature and our behavior in our whole universe. That's very broad again. When we talk about the word T, which refers to technology, it is definitely the branch of knowledge that we use the technical means in order to relate to our daily life. And the third part, E, for a general STEM, we have engineering. This is more abstract part of the idea of science, where we put the idea of arts or science towards a practical application. Engineering is more in that, where we use the application of basic science that we have learned in order to build a lot of materials, for examples, engines, machineries, and so on and so forth. And next interesting part of today's keynotes is definitely the arts, the word ARTS. So arts is definitely the idea of humanities, where we want to encompass the idea of quality, the productions, our expressions, our values and our realms as according to our aesthetic principle. So whenever we talk about arts, we are talking about those aesthetic values such as how beautiful, how appealing, and how it differs from one another. So arts is more than the nature of what we have learned, and arts could be a part of the important education that we need to look into. And last but not least, as part of STEM, we also have the mathematics, which M refers to mathematics. Again, anything that relates to arithmetic, numbers, including algebra, geometry, calculus, and so on and so forth, are part and parcel of the basic field of mathematics. So again, we have highlighted what is arts and how arts play a role in terms of STEM education. And now we need to highlight the importance of STEAM education. So whenever nowadays, when we keep on talking about STEM, it is somehow outdated. So by now, you should be appreciating to introduce and get exposed to STEM, not just in the stand of without the A, but now it should be STEAM education, S-T-E-A and M. So again, when we talk about arts, it definitely covers all our humanities, our social sciences, including laws, including geography, including arts, drawings. All these are part and parcel of our A. The A here is very broad against, including our psychology are all part of the art. So again, we can't deny the importance of interdisciplinary of the STEAM education, especially when we talk about arts. So it is very important. We must remember STEAM is again the future that we are moving forward with. So it's not just STEM alone whenever we are in the scientific field. We are also incorporating and working collaboratively with the field of arts for STEAM education. All right. With that, I will move on to the second part of the keynotes where we're going to talk a little bit of the low carbon. All right. So whenever we talk about low carbon idea, we are basically going to talk about today's is the emissions. When we talk about low carbon, when we talk about the C here is very broad. So when we talk about low carbon, definitely we talk about CO2. So when we talk about carbon emissions, most of the time you may come across in your mind is the CO2 or the carbon dioxide emission. So there are many anthropogenic sources. Some of them could be natural sources as well, where human-induced sources of CO2 have led to a lot of problems such as global warming as well as climate change. However, on the other hand, we are also experiencing a lot of other problems relating to the carbon emission. So as of that, for today's topic, for the keynotes, I focus a little bit introductory to what we know as low carbon cities. It may be something new to you, in fact, maybe you are made aware of, and perhaps some of you has been working together in developing a low carbon cities in your home country. Low carbon city is not something new. It has been there for nearly 10 years or more. In fact, the idea of low carbon city is a concept where basically we want to introduce the green element into the development of a city. So again, due to the upcoming, increasing trend of global warming as well as climate change, this has basically due to the results of urbanizations, population rise, as well as our economic growth. This has indirectly leads to large, carbon dioxide emissions in many of our cities, especially our urban areas. With that, the idea of carbon cities has developed where we want to introduce a very low carbon emission. So that's why when we talk about low carbon cities, or in short, we use the word LCC, which stands for low carbon city, defined to be a particular city that comprises of society which consumes sustainable green technology, green practices, as well as it emits relatively low carbon, or in other words, when we talk about carbon here, most of the time, if you're in the field of environmental sciences, we will definitely use the more technical terminology such as greenhouse gases, because there are so many types of greenhouse gases that we could define further. But however, for a very layman understanding, so we will talk about low carbon in the form of greenhouse gases. And with the idea of low carbon cities, we could basically delay or in fact avoid those adverse impacts of climate change. So this is the main idea that we want to actually inculcate to our citizens in order to promote a low carbon city in your home country. So in Malaysia itself, where we have started low carbon city for nearly more than 10 years, and we are practically doing good. All right, and again, just to define what is a low carbon city over here, and according to the Chinese Research Academy of Environmental Sciences, a low carbon cities always leads to a low carbon economy as well as a society, along with a sustainable form of development. So again, theoretically, there are two major aspects of a low carbon city. And this includes, as what mentioned, the low carbon economics, as well as number two, we have something known as low carbon consumption. So when we talk about the first part of low carbon economics, we are referring to the increased energy, water efficient, as well as to reduce carbon emission based on how do we manage our resources. We must be efficiently managing our resources in a very practical way in order to ensure it is suitable to be used and also available in our long-term plan. And on the other hand, when we talk about low carbon consumption, this is again the idea of the whole LCC, the low carbon city, is definitely to reduce our carbon emission from all aspects. And because end of the day, we want to ensure our green areas will continue to be and carbon sink. So this indirectly will help to promote a more healthier and long-term sustainability in terms of a suitable platform for growth and also livelihood for everyone. So this is what we want to achieve by having a low carbon city. Okay, so when we talk about low carbon city, they are actually very long chapter. Normally we do that in class. We could even take up to 2 standalone chapter to discuss on this. But again, just to give you the brief idea of how a low carbon city works, basically low carbon city includes certain elements. And over here, you could see some of the important elements of a sustainable cities includes a good governance. We must have a proper transportation and mobility systems, such as your train system, such as your vehicle movements. These are part and parcel of your transport and mobility. Next, we talk about our built environment as well as our natural environment. These are mostly related to how we manage our forests, our infrastructure. This is part of this built and natural environment. Next online, you could see is our services. Normally, services is quite huge and broad, and these elements includes our sewerage, services. This also includes our water supply system, stormwater management system, and so on and so forth. Next is talking about economy. In a very sustainable city itself, the economic growth must be at a parallel stage with the development of the cities. So this is what we look into from the economic aspect. Next, we are not forgetting the sociological aspect. In a very important element of a sustainable city, we need to ensure there are equality and diversity. Everyone must have equal rights to access to the facilities that's provided by the city councils, for example. End of the day, when we talk about the element of sustainable development as well as sustainable cities, as a bit more specific here, we are also need to ensure the growth as well as the health protection of our community. So the community well-being is very important. It's not just the health is taken care of, the education accessibility as well as job opportunities are part and parcel of the community well-being that we will discuss. So again, on the right-hand side, these are some of the elements that is important to look into when we talk about the elements of certain cities. We have the ecology, we look into how our greeneries, how we design our transportation. We talked about it earlier, whether you're going to have mass rapid transports, whether you're going to have all those, light transit transports or other boating transport and so on and so forth. These are part and parcel of the development that we need to look into. Next, we talk about green building. Maybe some of you are familiar with green building. There are certain criteria to look into buildings that are use a lot of components and elements of green. That is how we define, and in fact, there's an award system. Next, we talk about services in the sense of how we manage our water, energy, and even waste management in a building itself. It's also quite important. Other components also largely discussed in the elements of sustainable cities are the green space or landscape area around your cities, including other innovations that you can chip in, such as like we have e-vehicles, electrical vehicles, and so on and so forth. So these are part and parcel of certain important elements that we need to put into the low carbon cities. All right. So these are some of the other aspects that I would like to highlight for today's keynote speech, where you could see that we have the life cycle of a city. We are looking into the planning from before you develop a city itself. We need to do a lot of thorough planning, and subsequently during the construction period of time, the development phase, we also need to do a lot of planning. And subsequently, when your city is starting to get more and more crowded, there are high occupancy rates, we still need a continuation in managing the city. And last but not least, upon developed cities has emerged, we still need to continue regenerate and replenish the resources to ensure it will continue to serve as a sustainable city. So there are a few criteria that we look into when we talk about low carbon city. Low carbon city is not something easy to achieve, where we have an indicator. This is our indicator where you can look into, like for example, if you reach up to 100% deductions, you're definitely known as a carbon neutral. Okay, maybe to some of you, especially in China, it's a very huge topic and it's a very popular topic. We talk about carbon neutral. Means you have the total zero emission of carbon. This is where we aim to achieve. All right. Aside from that, if you could attain up to about 70 to 99% of carbon reduction of your master plan, you basically are rewarded like the grade 5 best practice. And subsequently, if you only can obtain few percent of reduction, like less than 10%, you are considered not bad. You're basically giving a good approach to the environment. In fact, you'll be recognized as one best practice number 1. And in terms of scoring, when we look into the LCCF, which is the Low Carbon City Framework, there's a checklist. Again, this is a very complicated and comprehensive list to look into because we have so many aspects and elements. When we do a lot of audits or inspections, whenever your score is above 90%, basically you're doing a very good, excellence promotion of a sustainable city. So end of the day, we need to play our role in promotion of a sustainable city. And this is where we want to aim to achieve end of the day. So again, low carbon city is not a dream. It is something that we are facing and moving forward. It is something certainly a mission and a goal that is accomplishable. All right, and we are moving towards achieving one. And again, many mega cities, especially your home metropolitan cities, are moving towards this. Maybe you are not aware of, but probably it's good for you to start searching for some information in how to help to ensure your home cities turn to be a low carbon cities. All right, with that, I would like to thank all of you to be a part to listen to this keynote speech. I'm very honored once again, and I'm very pleased that I could be a part of the speech today to deliver on the 11 ASEAN plus 3 student camp and 13 teacher workshops for the gifted in science. I wish you all the best in completing the workshops and in the camp, and I hope to see you again in the near future. Please continue to stay safe, and once again, thank you very much.